Welcome back to another episode of the Ryan Lord official podcast. Today we have yet another very special guest joining us from the USA, all the way in LA right now. We have Mr. Corey Quinn. Corey, over to you. Please let the audience know who you are and what you do,
Yeah.
and then we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm excited to be here, excited to chat. So my name's Corey Quinn. I have, over 25 years of professional experience. I came up through sales and marketing and then executive leadership. About 2 years ago, I left my role I left my career behind as an executive in a sort of the corporate world to step back into entrepreneurship. And today what I do is I have a coaching and training business that is focused on helping digital marketing agency founders escape what I call founder-led sales. What founder-led sales is basically when you're scaling up an agency as an entrepreneur, typically you see the founder, playing a very big role in the sales function. You don't have sales, you don't have revenue. If you don't have revenue, you don't have a business. So it's only natural for the founder to start off in sales. But as we know, as you scale up, it becomes important for the founder to separate themselves from the day-to-day as it relates to multiple aspects of the business, including sales. Typically, the last thing they let go of is sales. And so my focus is really helping them to build that future for themselves so that they can be more focused on the business versus in the business.
That's super cool. And what actually inspired you to kind of get started in this space?
Yeah, thank you. So I'll tell you a quick story. As I mentioned, I have about 17 years in the agency space. The first role that I had was at a company that was founded by a graduate of Harvard Business School, HBS. And the thing that's really, HBS is known for is the amazing network, right? You go to Harvard Business School and all of a sudden you have you have a direct line to all these really powerful business people. Well, this founder of this agency was able to help us secure meetings with the heads of, very big brands, e-commerce brands and retail brands like Lululemon and Hyundai and Remax and all these businesses. And as a result of that, we were able to grow, but it was because of this founder's Rolodex. Okay. That's how we were able to grow. The next agency I worked for was the ex-CEO of MySpace, which is that old-timey social media platform, MySpace. Yeah. And he too was an amazing networker, very well connected. MySpace made money from advertisers. So he had in his cell phone the names and the mobile phones of all the CEOs and the CMOs of all the big brands. And as a result of those connections, we helped to grow the agency. And by the time I'd been in the agency space, by like 7 or 8 years, I began to believe, based on this experience, that the only way to kind of grow an agency is by having a charismatic, very well-connected founder who can bring in all the deals and the sales team closes the deals. Well, it wasn't until I took my next role as the chief marketing officer at a company called Scorpion here in California. And what I found at Scorpion was something very different, which was a sales team that did not rely on the founder. In fact, you would have, it was an agency focused on, personal injury attorneys or law firms. These lawyers would call into the sales floor at Scorpion, and in many cases, the attorney would, the salesperson would close the deal on the first call, like a one call close, and that attorney who was buying from Scorpion, basically marketing and lead gen, didn't know who Scorpion's founder was, didn't care, wasn't a part of the buying process. What they cared about was working with an expert in attorney marketing who had proof and evidence that they could do a good job. And that was when it kind of began to open my eyes to the power of this idea of taking a vertical market approach. During my time there at Scorpion, we started off with one vertical, attorneys, and then we expanded into attorneys and home services, and then attorneys, home services, and then franchise, and eventually medical. And over this time, we grew the business from 20 million to 150 million. Nice. And so the long way to answer your question, which is I found the sort of the lightning in the bottle, which is that you can grow a service-based business, an agency, or even a SaaS, or many different types of businesses as a result of taking a vertical market approach, or in other words, specializing in serving a specific industry or vertical is a great way to scale an agency. Once I had that firsthand experience, I became very passionate about helping other founders to do the same.
That's really, really interesting because I was actually looking into niches, and
Mm,
there's a very interesting question, right? And we spoke about this on another podcast. It's to
mm.
niche or not to niche, right? Now,
Yeah,
obviously, for
yeah.
you, it's to niche, right? But then
Mhm.
I've also heard and I've seen other entrepreneurs
Mhm.
that have brands that don't really niche and are still super successful. Let's have a look at
Sure.
somebody like, I'm going to use this example, even though he did at first niche, but then now he's
Yeah,
a little bit more broad. But like Alex Hormozy,
sure.
right? Like
Sure.
he niched down with gyms
Yeah,
in the beginning, but now
yeah,
he's more broad. So like,
yeah.
how important would you say niching down is as opposed to being more broad? Don't you feel like you're kind of blocking out any opportunities from people from other, other
Yeah,
industries and other markets if you don't kind of sorry, if you
sure.
do kind of niche down?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a great question. It's worth exploring and kind of unpacking. Um, so I think first off, it does feel counterintuitive to sort of not to artificially lower, reduce the size of your total addressable market. And I would argue that it's not for everyone. It's not the sort of the one and done advice that everyone has to niche down. To your point, Alex Ramosi, but you see a lot of other agencies that focus on SEO, and they work with e-commerce, they work with lead gen, everything in between. They've not niched down when it comes to who they serve, and they're very successful. So I don't claim that it is a guaranteed way to be successful, or it's the only way to be successful. However, what I have found is that a generalist agency in today's world has a very difficult time when it comes to positioning. Typically, a generalist agency is very watered down positioning. In other words, you're sort of a jack of all trades. You serve a variety of clients, you do a variety of things. As a result of that, the market, the people who you're selling to, don't really see your unique value. You may have some unique way about going to market or some interesting IP, but it's very hard for the market to understand that. That's number one. Number two, you end up competing based on price because the market perceives you as just another agency. It's kind of doing the same thing, whether it be funnels or SEO and so on and so forth. And you end up losing clients because you're perceived as sort of replaceable. The opposite is what you want is the opposite. You want very sharp and clearly defined, differentiated messaging that positions you as an expert. And today it's not good enough to just be an expert in SEO. Everyone's an expert in SEO. The way that the thing that focusing on a niche or a vertical market helps you to do is to say, yes, we do SEO for, let's say, plumbers, right? The benefit of doing that is that all of a sudden, when you focus on a specific niche or an industry, everything becomes a lot easier. Okay. You know exactly what lists to go build and buy, which content to write on your website to rank for, which podcasts to launch, which keywords to rank for and to buy, which conferences to go to, which associations to get involved in. Everything becomes much more clear, and as a result of that clarity, you get a better result from all of your sales and marketing efforts, based on my experience.
That's really, really cool and super interesting. So obviously you have two different types of, niching down from what you've kind of mentioned. You've got the
Mm-hmm.
niching down on the services side, and
Right.
then
What
you've
you
got
do,
yeah, right. And then you've got the niching down on who you serve, right?
who you do. Exactly.
Right, right,
That's
right.
right.
So my thing is like that's really, really interesting. So for anyone that's looking to kind of find their niche, right? Do you just pick one specific industry, or can you have like three specific industries that you kind of serve? Like, would that still be a niche,
Yeah.
or would that not be a niche because it's more than one?
You can. So my last company, by the time I left, we were in four different verticals. And that's fine. However, what we did, how we approached it is it wasn't one company serving four different verticals. It was effectively four different business units within the agency serving 4 different independent verticals. Specifically, you had different people on the marketing team, the sales team, the client services team, the product team, all focusing on an attorney. That's all they did, is that was the attorney business. And then a separate whole infrastructure focusing in on home services and so on and so forth. The benefit of doing it that way was because was ultimately was great client retention, because we were able to go very, very deep into their world, be able to provide outstanding value for what they were hiring us for. I'll give you an example. So if we were a jack of all trades agency and we were selling, let's say we were selling to an attorney, we would really only be able to talk about our technology and our approach. The way we approached it was, because we had a specialization with attorneys, we would expand the scope and the aperture of the conversation beyond, what we do from an SEO or a PPC perspective. And we asked them interesting questions like, tell us about your intake process. What happens when the phone rings? What's your average case value? What is, what are the best kind of clients? And then how do you retain them, or how do you charge for them? And, we begin to position ourselves as a business advisor in their world, because many attorneys are not experts in marketing or in business growth. I'm speaking very broadly, obviously, but as a result of our specialization, we kind of blended business growth, attorneys, and digital marketing. We were able to, in many cases, help them improve their business well beyond the scope of just PPC or SEO or lead gen. That was made available to us because we specialized in attorneys and attorneys only.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So like, what challenges did you face, not just from niche and down, but in general?
Yeah.
And then how did you, overcome them?
So I would say that when I arrived at the company, the primary driver for new revenue was inbounds, like inbound leads coming in. And it was a great deal, because we had a 6-person sales team. They all drove nice cars. They all had a great lifestyle, and they would do these one-call closes and whatnot. The challenge was the founder wanted to grow the company faster. He didn't want to wait for the phone to ring. He wanted to, be more aggressive. And so what we did, the first thing we did is we brought in an outbound sales and marketing approach, which means, yes, you receive the phone calls, the inbounds, you try to close those. But in addition to that, we went out and created lists of attorneys that we wanted to go outbound and try to build a relationship with. That alone, that effort really helped us to double the business from 20 million to 40 million.
That's insane. And when you say outbound, what were like the main strategies? Was it like cold calling? Was it going to events? Like, what were your main strategies?
Yeah. So I think we did something that's kind of counterintuitive, different than what I think a lot of people do when they or think of when they think of outbound. Today, when they think of outbound, they think of like net fishing, throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall, like throwing a bunch of spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, or creating a huge list of attorneys and sending them a sequence of emails and offers and see what comes back, right? That's not the kind of the approach that we did. We did something that I call more along the lines of spear fishing, okay? Where we would spend a lot of time on developing a great list of attorneys that we knew were large enough, that could afford our services, that had the pain point that we can solve. And we would validate this before we would send them a gift. So what we did is something I call today, which is called gift-based outbound, which means that we would send them a unique, striking gift that left an impression as the first touch in a multi-touch sales and marketing approach, 1 per quarter. So we'd send them a gift, then we'd follow up with sales. And if they didn't respond, or if they didn't get on a call with us, we'd send them another gift for 3 years. We do that every quarter.
That's really interesting. And funny enough, I've actually found that a lot of software companies do the same thing, right? Like they kind of send gifts to, the key decision makers and stakeholders. So I guess, somebody might ask, like, when would you kind of have an implication on when to stop? Like, how many gifts is enough to send? And
it's a great
what
question.
kind of gifts, what kind of gifts would you send, because you don't want to be spending too much money sending gifts and then they receive the gift and don't get back to you. So
so the way I'd like to talk about it is there is a product life cycle for everything. In America, Americans buy a house once every 9 years on average, right? So the life cycle of a house is 9 years. You know that the average buyer will go back in the market every 9 years. Well, the same is true for cars. Every American buys another car every 5 years. So they're going to, on average, every American is going to be in the market at least once every 5 years. Well, the average life cycle of a website or a client that we were targeting was roughly 2 to 3 years. Let's call it 3 years. Okay. So we knew that the entire market was going to be shopping for a solution that we can help them with over a 3-year period. So we would effectively commit to sending these attorneys gifts every quarter for 3 years and not stop until they said, okay, we understand you really want to meet with us. You're sending these wonderful gifts. Thank you for all this. We'll give you some time. Right. And that's really what the purpose of this is just it's to turn a cold call into a warm call. And in some cases they'd say, we're just never, we're just not interested. Take us off the list. But in most cases it would be, we either send it and they ghost us, and they send it again, they ghost us, and then we send it again, and then they get on a call with us, or we send it and they get on a call with us. And it's just right timing. So that's
Right.
typically how we would approach it.
So you kind of like wine and dine them, right?
That's right. And these are not like, you can't apply the spam your TAM approach to this. This has to be a very curated list of high quality leads. This is what I call a 20% list. It's not the entire list of businesses you work with. It's the 80-20. Like, think of like the Pareto principle, where 20% of the results come from 80% of your efforts. We're looking for the 20% of the market that that is a perfect fit for us, like the cream of the crop. Those are the ones that get the gifts, not just everyone.
Right. So these are like,
Yeah.
big companies, I suppose, where you can't really get in touch with the,
Maybe,
like the
maybe.
CEO just over
No,
a
no, I
phone
would
call.
say, yes, I would say maybe an enterprise motion, but we sold to attorneys, and some attorneys had, a 4-person law firm, but they were really interesting to us because they they served a specific type of client that was particularly lucrative for them and for us.
Right. That makes sense. And then what would you say is the difference between sales and marketing? Obviously, they both go hand in hand, but what would you say is the difference?
I think, it's a great question. The way I think of marketing, it's one to many, and sales is, one to one. Where today people will spend about 80% of the buying process in the marketing motion, where they're consuming your content. They may be, listening to your podcast. They may be consuming the gifts that you send out. And it's only until they're 80% of the way through the sales process or the buying process are they going to talk to a salesperson. That's where it goes from one to many to one to one. And that's when you get a skilled salesperson to help to uncover the actual problems and really be able to bridge the agency's solution to the future that they want to create.
That makes sense. And then have you got like any other, success stories of agencies that you've helped that you'd like to share?
Sure. So I have a number of clients. One was already in a niche, but they had a sales team that was kind of homegrown. They never really had a lot of official sales training, and when we came in, they were not very productive. They were following sort of an outdated script and process, and as a result of the work that we did, they went from closing about 10K in MRR per month, despite having a large sales team, over 200K per month in MRR, believe it or not, just as a result of refining their messaging and their positioning and clarifying who they're targeting, and then fixing their sales process. So it was like a 10x return on their sales process. We did have to replace some of their sales team as part of that.
Wow. And then, like how important would you say that it is to have, a certain amount of time that, your client is contracted to get into an agreement with you? Say, for example, some
Mhm.
agencies, they just do a rolling month contract, right? Just month for month. Other agencies, they do 3 months, some do
Yeah,
6, and some do
yeah.
12. Like, what would you say is a sweet spot?
So I think, in many cases, the especially when you're dealing with clients that are in the SMB world, less sophisticated marketers. I'm speaking broadly here. typically they don't want to sign a long-term contract. However, it's in their best interest to sign a long-term contract because in the world of SEO and even in PPC and some of the campaigns that the agencies will do, it takes time to start to see results, right? The last thing you want is a client who is investing for 3 months at one agency and the agency's doing all this great work. They haven't seen a lot of results yet. And then the client gets cold feet and leaves. And they never get the benefit of that 3-month sort of ramp of all that value because they left that agency, done something else. So in that regard, I think having longer term contracts are good for the client. And it's also good for the agency because it sets up the relationship such that they know that the results are going to come typically over a longer period of time. I'm not a big fan of sort of the get rich quick and, we're going to 10x your business in 3 months type of thing. I think that leads to potentially damaging behaviors as well as can really set not realistic expectations. And that's really a matter of taste, to be honest. But with that regard, I typically prefer longer commitments because I think it helps you to find right fit clients who are also willing to commit for the long run.
That makes sense. So how do you actually go about selling it? Like, do you find that it's easier to sell, like the rolling month contracts, or do you feel like it's easier to sell longer contracts?
Well, I think it depends on what you mean by easier. I think if you are talking to good fit leads who have a pain point that you could solve, that have a budget that makes sense for the value you're creating, I think that's pretty easy. You obviously have to do a good job of communicating the value of your of the work that you do, but that to me is an ideal situation. I'm not sure what you mean. What do you mean by roll-ups? Help me understand what that approach is.
So like a rolling month contract is when, like you'll sign a client and then, if the client likes the service, then, they can go again for another month and they can cancel at any time, like there's no real commitment. They just sign for a month up front. If they like it again, then they can go with you. If they don't, they can go elsewhere, like there's no real commitment on their end. It's just, month for month.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think there's inherently anything wrong with that. I think as an agency taking this approach, you need to take a sort of an eagle eye approach at your client churn. And the reason why is that typically a lot of the expense of a client is on the front end, acquiring the client. And you want to amortize that cost over as long of a period as time, meaning in an agency world, every month they stay is like an annuity payment. You want them to stay as long as possible, but your cost to service that revenue goes down every single month. And so ideally the incentive is to keep them for a long time. If you're sort of bringing them in with low to no friction by having sort of, risk reversals and guarantees and, immediate out and all those things, that's great. That removes the friction on the front end. However, if that creates a retention problem on the back end, I think that needs to be revisited or find a way to either improve retention or ask for a longer commitment.
Right. And then what actually got you into the world of, entrepreneurship? Like why entrepreneurship and not like, just a standard job?
Yeah. So I went to school in Santa Cruz, California by San Francisco. And I couldn't wait to get out. I was not sort of interested in college. I wanted to kind of be, do my own thing. I eventually, after college, came back home to Los Angeles, and my best friend and I, we launched a streaming media business. This is a long time ago, back in 1999. And we raised $6 million to do that. It was a dream of mine. I was the business guy, and he was the technology guy, and we built this streaming media business. And so it was a time of intense growth and fun and just learning, and it was a really fun time of life. Back then, the .com bubble burst. You probably heard of this, and so the company did not survive that experience. And I ended up going sort of more of a traditional career route from there. And ever since I did, I went into finance. I got an MBA, master's in business. I kind of followed that corporate career path, but I was always itching. My soul was always itching to get back into entrepreneurship. And so after this big run up of experience at my last agency, the 20 to 150 million. I saw that as an opportunity as that situation was unwinding, that as my opportunity to step back into being more of an entrepreneur and taking a bet on myself.
Right. So like what was your position in the last agency?
I was the chief marketing officer.
Nice. Okay. So that's pretty responsible. Like that's really
Yeah, yeah. I had I had a $6 million budget and I had a team of about 35 people.
that's insane. So let's talk about managing then, like what would you
Yeah.
say, it takes to manage a team of 35 people?
Sure. Well, luckily they all didn't report directly to me, so I had
Right.
a structure within my program. So I personally am my approach to leadership is one where I create really clear goals for my team, people who report to me, clear measurable goals. They could be aggressive, they could be reasonable. I don't love reasonable goals, but creating and communicating really clear goals, and then giving them the room to go and meet those expectations. And give them time, resources, money, whatever it is that they need to be successful. They're in that role because they've convinced me that they have the capability to be successful. So that's kind of my management styles. I'm not a micromanager. I don't care, to get involved in the details of the day to day. What I care about is that they actually meet the expectations that I've hired them to meet.
Right, that makes sense. And then do you feel like this space is becoming oversaturated, like the agency space, especially within the world of marketing?
And I think that there's a reason why people hire agencies, and the reason is because they need a specialist in their so businesses who hire agencies, they don't have the in-house capabilities to do the things that the agency does. Therefore, the agency is a specialist in solving a specific type of problem. I don't think the need of marketing is going to go away. Sure, there's a lot of agencies out there. The cost of starting an agency is nothing, and people are pretty savvy about marketing today. They understand copywriting and all these things. So there's a lot of noise, but I still think that there's a viable opportunity to build a viable and very successful 6, 7, 8 figure agency. Starting today, there's plenty of opportunity to do that.
So what about AI? Do you feel like AI is slowly overtaking the world of marketing, or do you feel like it's actually helping those in the world
Yeah,
of marketing?
obviously, it's a very fast moving sort of dynamic that's happening in the market as it relates to, let's say, generative AI and whatnot. I think ultimately clients don't particularly care how the thing was built or how the result was gotten, as long as it was gotten, right? As long as they got the result that the agency promised them. So if the agency uses a team of humans or a team of AI bots to do it, to create that outcome, I don't think it really matters. If anything, savvy agencies are really leaning into AI to figure out, how do we provide value for our clients. Another interesting development from this is that many businesses who don't understand marketing, they also don't understand AI. Like, AI is brand new. Marketing's been around forever. They still don't understand marketing. Well, this is an opportunity for agencies who specialize in a vertical market. Let's say attorneys, to be able to extend their the scope of what they're helping their clients with beyond marketing to AI. Right? They can become AI experts for attorneys
Yeah.
and be able to provide them with solutions to help them improve their businesses using AI better than if the attorney tried to figure it out themselves.
Right. So obviously I know the answer to this, right? But I'm a business, for example, and
Mm,
you're an agency. Why would I use an agency as opposed to hiring, a marketer in-house?
sure. Well, I think the it's hard. It's my perspective is I'll use the lens of an attorney marketing person. It's very difficult to find a good attorney marketing expert to come work for your company because there are not many of them and they're very expensive. Like, very expensive because they're specialists, they're experts, and
Yeah.
so they can charge big prices, right? And so the benefit of having an agency is you have access to the legal expert, as well as the all of the other resources that come with working with an agency as a partner. So that's the initial thing that comes to mind. What's your answer? I'm curious.
For me, I think it comes down to, as you said, finding specialists, right? I feel like And I've had this conversation loads of times, but I feel like within a lot of these modern day companies, like they look for marketers that have, gone to college for marketing, right? But a lot of
Yeah.
the time,
Right.
these marketers just have the theory, they don't have the practical. And
Yeah.
I've seen
Yeah.
them hire these marketers, right? Like fresh out of college, and you
Mm.
should see some of the work that they're putting out, like just
Yeah.
horrible, horrible, horrible work.
Yeah.
It's not actually getting them any results because they don't have practical experience. Whereas somebody that has an agency, like they're hiring or even outsourcing to talent that works on marketing every day for numerous different clients, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you use different outsourcing platforms, for example, and I'm actually going to ask you about what you think about using different
Hmm.
outsourcing platforms, but if you use
Sure.
platforms like, Upwork or, Fiverr.com, for example, a lot of the
Yeah.
time you would find that they actually have testimonials, they've got the practical, they've got their own kind of
Mhm.
experience and portfolio. So it's a lot easier to kind of draw from them and,
Yeah.
bring them in on your agency as opposed to hiring somebody that's worked at X company for 10 years and has only done what
Yeah.
X company has told them to do. And on
Yeah.
top of that, you could also write off an agency as like a marketing expense, whereas if you have an employee in-house, it's a little bit different. And you've got like employee benefits, you may have
Mm.
employee insurance, you may need an
Yeah.
office for them to work out of. There's so
Yeah.
much additional costs that, people don't
Sounds
think about,
crazy. Why would you do that? Yeah.
right? So yeah, like
No.
what do you
Yeah.
think about like the whole outsourcing world? Like outsource as an agency's outsourcing to,
Yeah.
Upwork
Well,
or Fiverr.
before I answer that, I will give you one instance where, hiring in-house can make sense, which is, and not my last agency. Well, that one, but the one before it, actually two before it, we were due PPC and SEO for e-commerce companies, like large brands, and they would pay us 40, 50, 60K a month in fees, maybe even more. And of course, the challenge that they had was they're paying this agency all of this money every single month, whereas they could potentially hire some people in house and actually own the IP or own that the expertise in house versus pay an agency to do it. The price of the agency fee of the 50K a month, you could justify, well, we could spend 30K a month and build it in house, right? That isn't necessarily what I would recommend, but that's what clients will think about when they get to that level of expense. So that's that. So when it comes to hiring out of sort of third party platforms, yeah, I've got some experience in doing that. I mean, I've got everything from hiring people to do sort of research online and data gathering. I also have folks who are specialists in doing one specific thing. So, for instance, I'm on Kajabi. That's my platform that I use for my website. Um, Nobody knows Kajabi except for Kajabi experts. Like, there's all these nuances, right? And so, of course, when I want to change my website, I need to go out and hire the Kajabi expert for a month to go fix all, do all the things I need. So that's another example. So I think from a perspective of the business owner, the entrepreneur, I think it provides a lot of value and flexibility and leverage, being able to go out and find these experts and sort of with this very specific skill set to solve a very specific sort of problem. I think that's great. I think it's a great way to sort of approach it.
Right. And then what do you feel, like how do you feel about all of these social media marketing gurus that are popping up left, right, and center, I'm not gonna mention any names, but I'm pretty sure that,
Yeah.
like, yeah, like a few, like they have these massive YouTube channels,
Yeah.
and they claim to be, social media marketing experts, but most of their money probably came from selling courses as opposed to actually doing the work and
Yeah.
having a client. So what's your take on
Yeah.
that? And like, what's your take on the whole world of coaching? Because it seems like
Mm.
everybody's a coach now, and everybody, everyone and their mother has a course to sell.
Yeah. So funny. So I think the challenge in this regard comes when you have um, the traditional buyer of a social media marketing agency is not a very sophisticated buyer. They're unable to kind of find the sort of the shiny kind of fly by night people who are just trying to be very flashy and try and convince you versus the tried and true folks who know actually how to do the work. And so that's where that's where the challenge comes in is when the business would hire someone without really understanding how to buy, like what to look for, and so on and so forth. So I think there's a lot of risk involved from a business buying these sort of solutions. Um, and on the flip side of that, I have sort of a personal preference when I'm hiring an expert, because I've got coaches and whatnot. I only hire people that have done the thing that I'm trying to do, right? Not to someone who has a big promise or a big offer. If they don't have the specific experience and a lot of experience doing the thing that I'm trying to do myself, then I'm not gonna hire them. And so I think that's one way to kind of filter out the noise of all this sort of hype stuff that happens on these channels.
Right. And then how would you know that they're legitimate? Is it just through like their portfolio and their experience, or is there like other ways that you can tell?
Yeah, I'm slow to buy, so I do research on people. I try to understand, like, if they have testimonials, maybe I reach out to a couple. Like, say, hey, I saw that you worked with so and so, and what was your experience? Would you recommend them, and so on and so forth. So I tend to do my research in that regard.
Right, that's super cool. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
important to do your due diligence. So like I
yeah,
see in the background you have quite a few books, right? I'm actually
yeah,
quite, quite a big reader myself. So what
yeah.
would you say, are your top three favorite books?
Well, I'll share in the world of marketing and business. I have to go back to the tried and true Influence, which is by Robert Cialdini. He wrote it's Persuasion, I'm botching the name, but it's the six weapons of influence. It's called Persuasion. I'll pull the book out for you a second. That's always it's all about these six sort of principles as it relates to sort of marketing and persuasion. It was written maybe 50 or 60 years ago, or even longer, but it's still true today. It's such a powerful book, so I recommend that. Also a fan of the work that Dr. Benjamin Hardy does. He wrote a couple books around the concept of your future self. So the idea is that you envision your future self, who you want to be in the future, and that future self guides who you are today. Like you take direction from the future. He wrote a book called 10x is easier than 2x. It's a great book, as well as Who Not How is another great book he wrote with Dan Sullivan. Those are two that immediately come to mind. I think the third one is similar in spirit to How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a book by a gentleman by the name of Joe Polish. He's an old-time marketer, marketing guru. He wrote a book called What's in It for Them. There's an old saying in marketing, like, what's in it for me? My favorite radio station, WIIFM. He wrote a book in this regard about really thinking about how to leverage this idea of building relationships by asking what's in it for them. Not what's in it for me, but what's in it for them. Like, how do I be really intentional about that as a way to build genuine relationships?
I love that. And then,
Hmm.
as a segue into your book, anyone, not everyone, could
Yeah.
you explain a little bit more about that?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. It is a book for agency founders who are stuck doing founder-led sales. The specific transformation of this book, my promise of this book, is that you will go from a generalist to a vertical market specialist. It's the 5 steps I take my high-end clients through that you could do. You could have this transformation all on your own by following the steps in the book. There's also an online set of resources, which are checklists, worksheets, SOPs, so on and so forth. There's videos that are the free companion to the book. You go at the book, and then you can do the worksheets and do the exercises and get that transformation of escaping founder-led sales, becoming an expert, getting paid as with a premium, have great client retention, and so on and so forth. So that's really the focus of the book.
That's super cool. And then in regards to any words of wisdom for any
Yeah,
agency owners that are just starting out, number one,
yeah,
what words of wisdom would you give them? And then what words of wisdom would you give agency owners that are already kind of like on their journey and want
yeah.
to scale?
I would say, just for agency owners just starting out, say yes to a lot of different people. I don't think it's the time to be super selective. I think it's the time is to get into business, get cash flow going, learn the business of being in a business, figure out how to manage people, how to manage projects, how to do process, all that stuff. And over time, you'll begin to understand what you like doing, what you're good at, what the market needs. And it's at that point, year to maybe 3 years in that you can ask these deeper questions around, okay, if I'm going to specialize my agency, I'm going to do it based on this data, this experience, versus coming in and making a bunch of assumption about what is and what isn't going to be helpful or useful. So I'm a fan of saying yes a lot early. And then for the folks who have been saying yes a lot and have gotten to the point where they're struggling because they can't escape founder-led sales, that is a good signal that it's time to start saying no, and more specifically, to get focus, to find a vertical market to focus on, to redefine your positioning so that it's very, sort of laser focused and sharp. And then number 3 is to use that focus in that positioning to drive more pipeline. So that's my advice to those folks.
That's amazing. And your top 3 entrepreneurs?
Top 3 entrepreneurs. Wow. I haven't thought about that one. Let me think here. I tend to like people who've done, sort of have walked the talk. I like I think Russell Brunson's amazing. I think I don't know.
I'm a big fan of Russell Brunson, by the way. I've got a few of his books and ClickFunnels. I really like the platform.
Yeah, I have expert secrets over there.
So
yeah, it's a good question. What's his name? Branson's amazing, and let's call it Joe Polish.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's 2. Like, let's go for one more for luck.
Okay. I would say, who do I respect? I really love authors. I think I want to become an author one day, like a true author, not just a businessman who has a book. So I'm thinking of like, let's see. I love Dean Jackson. He's another amazing guy.
Right. I haven't heard about him before, but I'm gonna have to look him up.
He's another marketing guru. He's the founder of the Squeeze page and of the 9-word email and a bunch of stuff. So he's been around for a bit.
Oh yeah, no, I've heard about the Squeeze page. So but yeah, I wasn't too familiar with him, but I'll give him a search. And then I know this is a little bit controversial, but like, what do you think about Tate? Somebody like Tate. Like, what do you think about him?
I don't really follow him enough to be able to have a strong opinion. To be honest, I'm happy to give my opinion. I don't have enough data on him.
Right. Well, like, what do you think about, somebody that kind of like just focus on like selling membership programs or courses as opposed to having an actual solid business? Like, do you think it's something that can provide like long-term success, or do you think it's
Sure.
like a here and there thing?
I think having a education training based business, so that be courses or membership, I think those are very viable and valuable businesses for sure.
Right. Okay. Perfect. And then how important do you think, or like, would you recommend to people that it is to get a mentor and to actually invest into mentorship?
I think it is the best thing you could do to short circuit the growth you need in order to get results quickly. You need to have great mentors and coaches all around you who have done the things that you are trying to do. It's a non-negotiable for me.
That's super cool. And then, like to wrap it up, is there any more kind of, like words of wisdom that you'll give to the audience?
I would just kind of circle back to what you just said. Find coaches that you can invest in to help you to shortcut your success. That would be it.
And then, like before we conclude, like where can our audience connect with you on social media and stay updated on your book launch? And
sure,
as a tradition on our podcast, what we usually do is we ask a question to pass on to the next guest. So it's very similar to like, the diary of a CEO. So
okay.
But I'll let you kind of plug your, like your social media first. And
yeah. I think so. An offer I'd love to give your audience when it comes to outbound, it's always a challenge. We talked a little bit about this. So I have a 6-day course. I'll give it to your audience for free. It's called Outbound. It's called GetOutboundROI.com, and it's the 6 steps or 6 secrets to generating positive ROI from outbound. So if you go to GetOutboundROI.com, your audience can go there right now and sign up, and it's 6 days of a daily email teaching you about how to generate ROI positive outbound campaigns. That's number one. And then you can find me on, I'm on LinkedIn pretty heavy. I'm actually starting to get on Instagram again, spending more time there. So you can find me at Corey Quinn on LinkedIn, and then I'm at Coach Corey Quinn on Instagram. So those are 2 places for me.
Nice. I'm actually going to give you a follow on Instagram. I know that we're already connected on LinkedIn, so I'm going to follow you
Yeah.
on Instagram after this
Thank you.
episode. And then basically the last guest has a question for you, right? They asked, what's unique about you in 3 words?
McDonald's childhood actor.
That's super cool. Expand.
I was a childhood actor growing up in Los Angeles, with this face. Come on. I was recruited to go work to be in commercials. I'm kidding, of course, but I was recruited to go work in commercials. And so I was in the very first Chicken McNuggets commercial ever aired. I was the Chicken McNuggets kid. And then I did a bunch of other ones as well.
Nice, 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 nice. So are you still going and eating at McDonald's or not anymore?
Oh, once in a while, my family will go get some Mackers and chow down, of course.
Nice, nice, nice. I've actually found that a lot of entrepreneurs they actually come from the creative industry in one way or another. Whether it's being an actor, whether it's doing music, whether it's playing sports, like they do something creative. So how would you say that the two kind of are in line with one another?
I think there is a bit of risk taking and adventure in being an entrepreneur, and I think that probably attracts the same audience across entertainment as well.
Nice, 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 nice. And then what question would you like to pass on to the next guest?
What was your first job?
Nice. What was your first job? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I like that. Well, Corey, it was a pleasure having you on the show. And
Thanks, Ryan.
yeah, no, look, like I look forward to having you back on sometime. And to the audience that's been watching up until this point, I just want to say thank you for staying up until this point. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you drop a comment, make sure you go follow Corey on social media, and make sure you check out his website and get the information for free. Why not? It's free. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.